Welcome to Pop Monster, a podcast to feed all your pop culture cravings. My name is Sarah, a self-confessed superfan. This show will cover everything from reality TV chaos, nostalgic deep dives, and the latest in music, TV, movies, and books. So let's get into it. We have almost made it to the end of Love Island UK. Today, I'll be discussing week 7, and then next week, everything will be over. And with these last 2 weeks, I figured I was going to end up cutting down my episode length. I thought I would have about 20 minutes worth of stuff to talk about, because this is a point in every series of Love Island when people start to tune out until maybe checking back in for the finale. We've got past the post-Casa drama, and now it's time for all of the couples to start getting settled and locking things down. I am shocked to report that the actions of Finlay, a man I consider to have the personality of a piece of dry toast, have resulted in there actually being a little bit more to discuss than expected. So you're going to have to bear with me rambling for at least a good 45 minutes. Alright, so without any further delay, Sunday's episode picks up right where we left off on Friday, with favourite couple Yulia and Lorenzo having to choose who goes home between the bottom 3 couples, Lola and Sean, Mika and Samraj, and Martha and Jordan. And true to form, Lorenzo is already freaking out and struggling with this responsibility. Now, despite his perfect face, I consider Lorenzo to be undateable, but he's a 10 out of 10 friend, so production is basically torturing him. So this show, especially in the last couple of weeks, very rarely manages to surprise me, but I was shocked by Lola volunteering her and Fitzy as tribute. I have to say, I really respect her for this, and I guess Sean to some extent, but he did look a bit reluctant. This was a smart move. She's clearly seen the writing on the wall when it comes to their unpopularity, and they have found what they came here for. Although I didn't understand them saying that they'd probably pick them anyway. That makes it seem like they're trying to take the decision out of Yulia's hands in a classic, you didn't fire me, I quit move. But I really don't think they were going to be sent home if they hadn't offered. I hope leaving on their own accord shields them from some of the public hate. Now, I can't exactly get on my high horse here. I've had a lot of shit to say about some of these Islanders. But people need to keep their hate out of the Islanders' comments. Everyone will have their own opinion, but nobody should be bombarding them and tagging them with it. This is a reality show for entertainment. It's really not that deep. Oh, this is a lot. Maybe I need to talk to my doctor about my dosage, but I was crying watching them all sobbing about this dumping, and I never normally get emotional about this show. I will say that Love Island USA is another story, because they really showcase the Islanders' personalities more, so you really grow to love them. I had a complete meltdown when I was watching them have their family visits. It was beautiful, and every day I'm regretting my decision to choose to cover the UK this year instead of the US. Not that I haven't found some enjoyment in Series 13, thank you Simba, and it's far from the worst series we've had. I would say that this is The Godfather compared to Series 11, which is definitely The Godfather Part 3, and hopefully Series 14 will be a return to form. Anyway, it was so jarring watching everyone be so emotional while they're still absolutely covered in pie. My highlight of this episode was getting a fleeting scene between another one of the rarely seen friendships, a Monica and Joey plot, if you will. I really wish we got to see more of this Ellie and Simba friendship. He's at his best when he's one of the girls, and I have to give it to him, he really knows how to pull off a holiday shirt. She fenced to him about Finlay wanting to still get to know Alicia, and I guess she's come to the right place because Simba is basically the Jedi master of tests and exploring and owing things to himself. But I love to see him having her back. Once they get to bed, I did feel bad for Samraj when he was trying to take the blame for him and Mika being in the bottom. It must be hard when you're worried about the public hating you. Although I think since they've resolved things with Priya, it's more of a case of them being a bit boring and people being more motivated to vote for some of the other Islanders rather than a case of people actually not liking them. Regardless, they're both stunning and I can definitely see them doing some modelling brand work outside of the villa. They'll be okay. Okay, enough about the dumping. Let's jump ahead to the next morning and get into one of the 2 main storylines for this episode, both of which center around our new bombshell, Alicia. Thank you for your service. She is really shaking things up. So first let's talk about her love triangle with Aiden and Priya, including a guest feature from Ethan. Now, I loved seeing Jasmine and Cavan call Aiden out for completely ignoring Priya in the Snug Marry Pie challenge. That was a ridiculous move. Sometimes with Aiden, I can't tell whether he's just a complete idiot or if he's just weaponizing incompetence to get away with this shit. I also forget that he's 23. If there's 2 lessons that we should take from this boy, number 1, always wear sunscreen with a high SPF. Number 2, moisturize. And then I have to watch the stunning Priya cry over him. Sometimes it feels like I'm watching tragedy porn. This is all too bleak, and why I had to stop watching shows like This Is Us. I need him not choosing to marry her in the game to be the trigger that leads to her abandoning this couple. Ethan is right there, and I'm sure he'll end up disappointing her too because she just can't get a win or even the bare minimum of respect from these clowns. She's had enough of saying, I'm 25, I'm Priya from Surrey. All she wants is to be free of these triangles. Alicia pulls Aiden for a chat by the fire pit, and this girl has to be commended for really putting in a shift. Her ability to pretend that her kiss with Aiden was good and a 9 out of 10. Wow. And her toxic take that jealousy is sexy. Meanwhile, seeing them flirt is too much for Priya right now, and I don't think she's really that into Aiden, but it's just a culmination of her ending up in this situation so many times now. Elise even went up to check on her on the terrace and brought her sunscreen and a drink. This really took me aback, because with the lack of effort and courtesy these boys have been giving, it felt like I was watching him offer her one of his kidneys. It was a classy move. All Aiden can offer her is continually telling her that she's his priority when all of his actions beg to differ. Then we have the Ellie, Finley, Alicia triangle. I do wonder whether he would have wavered in Casa if Alicia had been there. Now, something I need to say about Finley is that I've never been a fan, but for the plot, I do respect that he's boldly going for things with Alicia, even though we're in the final 2 weeks, and he has the knowledge that Ellie has basically become the nation's Princess Diana. It's better that Ellie finds out now exactly who he is, rather than be fooled and used by him to get into the final. So, finally, we see Finley pull Alicia for a chat up on the terrace. And sidebar, but I'm really impressed with how clean the white sofas out there have remained. I would have thought by week 6, between the fake tans and tear stains, it would be a real Rorschach test of sadness. Oh, I really hope people aren't using sunbeds again. Anyway, sorry, her biggest turn on is neck kisses, and she's found the right man, because we know that's his loophole. Overall, this chat was pretty boring, but it's safe to say that he's not shutting things down with Alicia, and another kiss is on the cards. Later that evening, Yasmin gets a text. It's time to gather around the fire pit and for the bombshells to steal a boy and girl of their choice. First, and to no one's surprise, Ethan picks Priya, and I'm not sure I even saw him speak to any of the other girls. Next, it's Alicia's turn to choose, and in her speech, she mentions being a girl's girl. To which Cavan, wearing his wife beater, gets his claws out and whispers, "Is she fuck?" to Jasmine. Now, I feel this attitude is uncalled for. I get that everyone loves Ellie, I do too. But what do you want Alicia to do in this scenario? Just make friends because everyone is so settled down? Or to only focus her attention on the boys that Yulia, Marfa or Priya are coupled up with because everyone values them less? I don't think she's done anything wrong. As a post-Casa bombshell, she needed to be aggressive, and if you want to push the blame on someone, it's Finley. He's the one in a couple with Ellie, he's been intimate with her in bed, and it's just not being transparent with her. He's a terrible communicator, and based on everything he's been saying to Alicia, it's not shocking that she chose to steal him. This results in an Ellie crash out, and I can't believe that this dweeb hadn't pulled her for a single chat all day. It's very interesting to see these cowardly, avoidant boys who would usually ghost someone on the outside have no idea how to navigate these things in the villa where there's nowhere to hide. Oh, something I forgot to say was how relieved I was to see that Yaz wasn't in the bottom 3. I was a bit worried that she'd be forgotten, and bless her for collecting Ellie's shoes when she threw them in a rage. We've all been there, and that's a good friend. Now, I will say, I need to see less of Ellie ranting at the girls about the stickhead, and for her to direct all of her energy at Finley. I needed her to channel her Series 5 Anna energy and yell 2 fucking days at him. And now that he's been picked, Finley is desperately trying to backtrack, and I just can't witness her putting up with this shit or him winning at the end of this. I just don't know where we go from here with Ellie. She's down bad, and I just don't know how open she'd be to anyone else. And to be fair, she's already had enough bombshells set into the villa just for her. Yes, they've all been trash, but this year the theme has been slim pickings. Maybe all the better boy options deferred their enrollment until next year after the World Cup. And Finley just can't escape the endless lectures from the other guys. I love that Lorenzo is now giving off father of the bride vibes and has a sit down with Samraj to put Finley straight. I have no notes on his advice. Everything he said to Finley was perfect. He's not telling him who he should pick, but he needs to be more honest, and Ellie deserves better than someone who she's not the number one priority for. Like that terrible Hilary Duff film that I love, Finley, we need you to raise your voice. Even Alicia is getting the ick from how wishy-washy you're being. Eventually he pulls Ellie for a chat. She says that she's ready to walk, and he's now talking about not sharing the bed with Alicia, and that he still feels the same way about her. Spare me. I'm with Ellie. His apology means nothing, and this man doesn't respect her. I just need her to leave with her head held high. Listen to the suddenly wise Lorenzo's advice. This is just him, and if he's going to be like this right in front of her in the villa, what's he going to be like at all these club appearances where he can hook up with all of his admirers behind her back? But I have to say, I'm not feeling hopeful for Ellie. She's already making excuses for him. A trend which will continue into Monday's episode, which again revolves around the new love shapes formed from the arrival of the new bombshells. Honestly, I don't have too much to say on this episode. In a baffling move, it was extended, which was completely unnecessary. I needed to be like QI, and when that day has been dull as fuck, they should just do an extra small, 15-minute version. This could have been a YouTube short. Anyway, first let's discuss the whole Priya, Aiden, Alicia, Ethan situation. In the aftermath of Alicia choosing Finley, you can tell that Aiden's ego has been bruised. Now, he's doing a lot of talking about leaving what they had to the side and his head and heart being with Priya. I just don't trust his intentions at all. If the roles were reversed and Alicia had picked him and Priya was the one left single, I can guarantee he wouldn't be holding himself back. His tongue would be shoved down her throat like it was in a hideaway, and there would be no talk of boundaries. It's frustrating me to no end that Priya is barely putting in any effort with Ethan. She says she is, but she just looks completely checked out. I'm hoping that her holding herself back from kissing him is due to her just having zero interest or attraction to this guy, rather than her doing it out of respect for Aiden. A guy who would ditch her in a second and would be juggling a love triangle between Ellie and Alicia if given the opportunity. Now, I'm not buying that Priya's into Aiden in the slightest. She's just completely drained and finding comfort with a person that she's no longer. An added bonus being that he's an OG and they managed to avoid the bottom three together. When we get to bedtime, absolutely everyone is getting it on, apart from Priya and Ethan, and Finley, who, in his role as the nice guy, is sleeping out in the day beds. It was wild seeing Yaz possibly shagging that guy, because we barely caught a glimpse of these two in the daytime. Oh, and sidebar, something I've just noticed after 6 weeks, God I'm dense, is that we've been spared from the stupid sex slang, like all of that beauty salon stuff they come up with so that they don't have to tell their friends they've been fingered. I wonder what's brought about that change. They haven't really been talking about sex at all this year, and over in Love Island USA, I have been inundated with people talking about getting French fries. Anyway, let's move on to the next day. They get a text telling them that Alicia, Finley, Priya and Ethan are leaving the villa today for some double dates. And I have to assume that the only purpose for this was to incite another Ellie meltdown, because this is a second date for these couples that nobody cares about. I can barely get through dates at the best of times, and now I have to watch more scenes of Finley attempting to speak. This is painful. Despite all of his fuckery, he has still managed to maintain his position as the most boring man in Britain. At least Priya has stolen Lola's role as detective and can use this opportunity to spy and get some intel for Ellie. When they're gone, Ellie delivers another one of her 50 rants at the girls this episode about not putting up with any of his shit and Finley being an overall shite bag. And again, I'm sorry, but while I love to hear this, it just feels performative when she does all this talk to the girls, but isn't following through with Finley. This is rough to watch, and I'll get into this more later, but I think production is sensing that Ellie's winning odds are starting to tank, so maybe it's time to focus more attention on our recent top-voted couple, Yulia and Lorenzo. Now, I love Yulia, but God help us if these are our winners. I guess they're a better option than past shit shows like Jess and Sammy and Millie and Liam. Regardless, Lorenzo is happy that she is passing his tests of meshing with his friends, and when she tries to talk a bit about how she's enjoying how their relationship is developing, he immediately shuts it down and pivots their chat into a prolonged session of rubbing sunscreen on each other's bodies. These are the kind of softcore porn scenes that I fear I'd be judged for if someone else came into the room when I was watching it. All I've got to say is they're both very hot, and I love her Baywatch-style swimsuit. I always appreciate seeing a one piece on this show. Back to the dates. They're in that vineyard we've seen many times and enjoying some charcuterie and alcohol-free Prosecco. First we have Priya and Ethan, and this was a snooze. They talk about eye colour and how she likes to do spontaneous things like go for a weekend trip to Spain. To me, that doesn't sound like much of a trip because I imagine you'd have to basically spend all your time in the airport, which to me would be heaven, but logistically, I feel like it would end up being a very drive-by visit. Ethan is looking to settle down in the next couple of years, so is looking for something serious. And I fear that this experience has broken Priya's brain. It seems like him being so available and interested in her as a turnoff. She's now been reprogrammed to prioritize guys who barely tolerate her and consider her to be their backup plan. At least she has a kiss with him. Over to Alicia and Finley, and I don't even want to bother talking about their conversation. It was more generic flirting about eye colour and how much they enjoy speaking to each other. At the end of the date, Finley is feeling very charitable. He really doesn't want to be too harsh on himself. It's just too hard always being disrespectful. So he decides to stroll across the table to give Alicia a kiss. Shout out to Ethan for being the ultimate girl's girl and telling Priya to turn around to catch this action. Once they're back in the villa, the boys and girls get together in their groups to debrief. At least Alicia immediately spills to them all about the kiss, but if I was Finley... What a dark sentence. Anyway, if I was Finley, I would have tackled the producer so I could have got to Ellie first to make sure she heard that from me one-on-one. She shouldn't be receiving that information from anyone else, and that should have been his priority. I just can't believe this guy pulled a Simba and enforced his own boundary on not kissing and keeping things respectful, only to immediately trample over the line he drew himself. What is even the point? These men just love to talk a load of shit so that they can act like they've been respectful. Sir, you don't even have the respect to go check on Ellie now, when everyone has seen her storm off after hearing about the kiss. This poor girl is going postal in the dressing room, and I feel like for health and safety reasons, they should have given Angie and Yaz ear protection. Finley, you are the cowardly lion. Alright, now all I can think about is who each member of the cast would be in The Wizard of Oz. Lorenzo is obviously the Tin Man. Would that make Aiden the Scarecrow? Let me ponder on that. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. Finn says that he can't be fucked with the drama. Bitch, you created the drama. You just can't be fucked with the consequences. I had such high hopes that this would be Finley's funeral. Ellie is dressed in all black, but she disappoints me just like Angie and Jasmine already have. I enjoyed seeing her yell at him for how he's a prick, how he's taking the piss out of her, and how he keeps saying sorry, but it's just words and he doesn't follow up with any actions. And I have to say, this is kind of how I feel about Ellie too. For all the big talk that she screamed at the other girls, she's immediately crumbling and giving him a path back to reconciling things with her. This show is demoralizing. As a woman, there's kind of no place for you here unless you're a complete and utter doormat. They just always end up accepting this poor treatment, and then the guys face no repercussions and often end up winning the whole damn show. At least Alicia can stand on business and ends things with Finley after hearing all the backtracking he just did with Ellie. Good for you, Alicia. Now, with Finley, he told Ellie that he's 100% with her, but I just don't trust that he wouldn't have continued things with Alicia if she'd not been the one to dead it. She's right, he's definitely taken the easy way out, and I think he was definitely more into Alicia than Ellie. Now, on a positive note, I will say that there was something deeply soothing about watching so many women grill Finley this episode. His brain's just not built for this. It was lovely to see all the other girls have Ellie's back, and it was so satisfying to have Yulia unleashed on him. Like me, I'm sure she's not forgotten how rude he was to her during that couples goals game. Overall, this episode was a bit of a drag, but at least I can always rely on Simba to make a crazy move. With all these other men messing up, he can see an easier path to winning, and it's time for him to take things up a notch. Wow, the dramatics of this man taking Angie up into the terrace, confessing that he loves her, and asking her to feel how fast his heart is racing. She's a nurse, Simba. You can't trick her. When it's time for bed, Finley decides that he's atoned enough, and now it's time for him to join Alicia in their bed for a little chat, which sets Ellie off again. Why is she still with him? I'm sorry, but he clearly doesn't respect her or consider her feelings. He's shameless. He does eventually drag himself out to sleep on the daybeds, but the fact that everyone has to call him out again and he still doesn't think he's done anything wrong. If it takes a whole village to keep your man barely accountable, then he's clearly not your man. Now, I hate to sound like a downer, but once we get to Tuesday's episode, it's another case of the same shit, different day. Elise Production has gotten to Yulia's ear and tasked her with becoming the Villa's resident Veronica Mars, and she helps to stir up some drama. I remember in past years that an extended episode used to mean something. This was another episode, like Monday's, that was extended for absolutely no reason, apart from to show us some more ad breaks. Let's get things started by picking things up with the Ellie, Finley, Alicia triangle. Like Linkin Park, Ellie has become so numb she can't feel you there. Maybe numb is just another word for being complacent and going through the motions with a man-child who has zero regard for her feelings. She's confused because Finley did things with Alicia. Footage not found. I feel like that was mainly driven by Alicia not entertaining his bullshit any longer. Anyway, she didn't like seeing them have a chat in her bed after things were over between them. She said that she wants to take a step back, and I love you, Ellie, but you also said you were going to walk if he kissed her, and yeah, here you still are. I will say that it's very interesting to see the boys' reactions to Finley's actions, compared to when it was any of the other boys. None of them have a leg to stand on when it comes to messing around on their girls. Well, apart from Tommy 2.0, who we barely see speak. It seems like they really value Ellie more than the other girls, or they just really don't fuck with Finley, so aren't willing to co-sign and back him up. At times, it feels like they're pressuring him to pick Ellie, and if I was her, I wouldn't appreciate this. It's better for her to see who he genuinely is, rather than him faking it because he can't take the heat. Honestly, if Finley was left to his own devices, I really think that he would have picked Alicia. He's not always easy to read because he's a plank of wood, pretending to be a person, but he seems a lot more flirty and like he's more attracted to Alicia. I feel like this is why he's getting so defensive and hostile towards everyone's criticisms. I do love to watch the boys fighting though, and as the Villa's appointed therapist, Sam Raj was learning the repercussions of always trying to give advice to these idiots. Also, I would have loved to have seen the chat that Lorenzo and Calvin were having before Finley joined them. Despite all the forced drama, it's clear that Lorenzo really gets along with the Kent delegate, and these are the type of friendship scenes that I don't like missing out on. When it's time for him to pull Ellie for a chat, this boy just whines and complains to her about what a victim he is and how everyone is coming at him all the time. The fact that he has the audacity to say this to her face after treating her like garbage for the past few days. Oh, I can't believe she's even given him the time of day. Watching these two is really reminding me of Sierra and Wes from Summer House. Here's some context for anyone who is not familiar with that piece of excellent reality television. When West ended things with Sierra because he's a greasy fuckboy, he got a lot of backlash from the audience and their other castmates, and I feel like he always had an underlying resentment towards Sierra for that. It's a lot easier to point the finger at someone else than admit that your own actions were your downfall. At this stage, I don't think Finley even likes Ellie as a person. It seems like he's resigned himself to being tied to her until the end of the show and is pissed off that everyone is tarnishing the sweet boy from the Follies image that he's trying to project. He's a waste of space and Ellie's a mug. It had to be said. Afterwards, he does end things for good with Alicia, and I can understand her confusion, because all of his words and actions before this made her think that he was more open to her. At least she's got a lucky escape, and I truly don't think that she's interested in any of the options that were available to her in the villa. It's a hard knock life for a late-stage bombshell. And this is how I feel about Priya as well. She doesn't really want Aiden or Ethan, so game-wise, she may as well settle for Aiden. My conspiracy theory is that those two have concocted one of those friends deals, like when you agree to get married if you're both still single at 40. In this case, Aiden and Priya agreed that if they're both still left in the clearance bin after Casa, then they just stick together until the end. There's no romantic love here, so I'm getting pretty fed up with the amount of screen time they're being given. Later, Aiden even turns down a kiss from Alicia. I never thought I'd see the day. Anyway, they get a text and it's time for a recoupling with the girls doing the picking. As it's week 7, it was fairly predictable, and my main takeaway was how drab everyone looked. Obviously they're all gorgeous, but most of the girls are wearing black, and the boys are all dressed in kind of beige, neutral blondness. I would have killed for some colour, but I feel this was a great representation of the joyless vibes emanating from the villa. To no one's surprise, as a result of this recoupling, many of the couples remain unchanged. So the pairings are Yaz and Tommy, Marfa and Jordan, Angie and Simba, Yulia and Lorenzo, Mika and Samraj, and Jasmine and Kavin. The only changes come from Alicia picking Aiden, and fair, what else can she do? It always feels like such a waste to have bombshells come in at this point. With a week left to go, they all have such a big incentive to play it safe, and then they can pull an Adam Collard and shag their way through hundreds of club appearances throughout the UK. This leaves Priya with Ethan, and Ellie is lumbered with Finlay. She talks a big talk about him having to put a lot of work in, but we'll see, he can barely be bothered to be cordial to her. Oh, I'm looking at my notes here, and I can see that I've written that I'm happy for the Yaz and Tommy fans. They must be out there somewhere, because they've been able to avoid being in the bottom three, but they're basically ghosts on screen. So I was surprised we got to see them having a chat. They're cute and falling for each other, but it's just so painfully dull. I don't know if I trust that he's a good guy. We don't see enough of him to get a good read on that, but I guess he seems sweet despite having the charisma of a cardboard box. They pretty much decide to become exclusive, which at this stage means nothing in this filler. There's no one else coming in now, and I trust her not to roll things back with Aiden. Now, if I had to pick a highlight from Tuesday's episode, I guess it would have to be this brewing feud between Priya and Yulia. With Lola gone, someone else needed to pick up the mantle and incite some girl-on-girl violence. This all starts with Yulia interrupting Priya's talk with Lorenzo, and there's some mention of Yulia giving evils. I don't understand why Priya was getting so activated by this, unless there's a bunch of footage that we're missing. But it didn't seem like Yulia was annoyed by their friendship, so this all felt like a bit of a reach. I think that Priya operates on emotions while Yulia runs on logic. So Priya doesn't want a solution to not currently being coupled up with Aiden. She just wants sympathy and for her friends to listen to her vent. Whereas Yulia is very pragmatic. Priya has still got Ethan, a great guy who is focused on her, and she can still get to know Aiden. I can definitely see her point of view, but Yulia started to lose me when she decided to pull Aiden for a chat to investigate his connection with Priya further. Now, I don't think she's wrong in thinking that those two decided to stay together for safety, but it's wild that she is inserting herself into the situation when it doesn't seem like she has a particularly strong friendship connection to either of them. Mika is speaking sense when she says that Yulia shouldn't be doing so much pushing so that Priya and Aiden stay coupled with the bombshells. I don't get what Yulia's agenda is here. Does she want to keep Priya and Aiden separate so that it's much easier when Lorenzo next has to dump a couple from the island? That man has too much power. Anyway, Priya takes it upon herself to break up this conversation between Yulia and Aiden, which is fair because Yulia is being annoying as fuck here, but all of these people are busybodies, and I think it's getting to that point in the filler where everyone is feeling the cabin fever and really starting to get on each other's nerves. Although Aiden says he's in charge of his own vehicle, he needs his license revoked, but to be fair, he's usually the puppet master, so I doubt he's being influenced by Yulia. This episode closes with another vote, but this time for favourite girl and boy. And we all know who my favourite boy is, the Lion King himself. I'm unwell, so I'm truly rooting for him to walk away with the 50k. Okay, on to Wednesday's episode, which ends in a cliffhanger, so we don't even get to see the voting results, but we do get a return to the beach club. We start this episode with a sit-down between our recently formed Blonde Bombshell support group, aka Yulia, Marfa, and Alicia. Now, I do think that we need the bombshells to form a union because year after year, we watch the boys use and abuse them for their tests, then quickly discard them afterwards. Absolutely, they should be directing their anger at them. Where they lose me is all of the energy they're throwing towards Priya. I'm sorry, but you can't tell me that either Marfa or Alicia had any genuine interest in Aiden, and I don't get the shit with Yulia pushing this pro-Alicia agenda. It just seems like she's against Priya. Alicia chose Finlay and dedicated 95% of her attention towards him. Why is it now suddenly Priya's problem that she wants to pivot back to Aiden? We've seen this happen a lot with the hot people in this show spiraling out because they're not used to rejection. Marfa and Alicia's inability to process Priya getting picked over them is starting to feel like a microaggression, and I feel like Yulia and Marfa are dedicating their focus on this instead of having to confront their own dead-end relationships. Meanwhile, Priya is a woman on a mission. She is ready to lock down her relationship with Aiden because she has a final to attend. It takes about 0.2 seconds for her to end things with Ethan, and she's immediately calling over Aiden for the next chat. She is a corporate girly and always prioritizing efficiency. Ethan's feelings be damned. This fella is cutthroat. Aiden is all in on this game plan. He was already planning to dead things with Alicia that night. Like Simba, he has had his come to Jesus moment, he's a changed man, and even has managed to avoid kissing Alicia due to his strong feelings towards Priya. At this point, I say just let them both be scammers and stop giving them screen time. I will gladly watch any other couple. I feel like we haven't seen Jasmine and Calvin in a week, and I'm skeptical that we'll get to see them anytime soon. My conspiracy theory is that Jasmine has made a lifelong enemy in production because she decided to get back with Cav, rather than pivoting to the Lorenzo love storyline they were setting her up to have. Anyway, watching Priya and Aiden be giddy at their reunion is making Alicia very bitter. She feels like she's been cock-blocked and is ready to take the low road. When she has her chat with Aiden, she is pissed off. She thinks that the Priya and Aiden connection is bullshit and not genuine, and that he hasn't given her a fair chance. I guess it's refreshing to see someone not just take it on the chin and be the bigger person. You fight for your 15 minutes of fame, girl. My favourite part of her storming off is the cut to Angie and Simba just watching the drama while he's rubbing her feet. I died laughing, and I'm convinced that she now hates this man, but is enjoying making him put in a shift. One of the most interesting things about this show is watching the evolution of the Islanders throughout this experience. Now, Priya. We have been watching her become unglued for weeks now, and she's saying, "Hello Gollum, goodbye Smeagol." Having Alicia dismiss her romance with Aiden as fake and just a friendship has her dragging this man to the hideaway. She's done playing nice and fuck respecting the bombshells. Poor Ethan needs to be separated from this narrative. Oh, and sorry, but sidebar. When they're discussing this hideaway excursion with Yaz and the mute that she's coupled up with, there is a can of Sour Cream Pringles on the table. This is probably the craziest moment of the episode for me. Don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan and they're in my top 3 Pringle flavours, but those things stink. They're delicious, but they're pungent, and I'm just shocked they haven't been banned from the filler. You can't all be eating these and ramming your tongues down people's throats. Where's the decorum? Anyway, in the hideaway, she crawls into his lap, they have some disgusting Pringles kisses, and chat some more shit about Alicia. I was cringing through all of this. It was giving desperation, and they're trying way too hard to sell this coupling. I need to move on, I'm sick of discussing them. And if Alicia and Ethan want to connect with people open to exploring with them, why don't they have chats with Martha and Jordan? Of course, that's not their first priority, because as cast of bombshells, they're barely more established on this island. You're all playing the same game. Later in the bedroom, everyone is having fun. Mika is dancing with Aiden and even gives him a socially distanced twerk. It was nice seeing these people not be miserable 24/7. Because if I had to make a word cloud from what the girls have discussed this week, the most said words would be numb, drained, crying, dickhead. It's been dark, so some lightness is needed. And I needed Samraj to sip it and not try to relate her being silly to her being inappropriate with men in clubs once they're on the outside. Shut up and let her dance, you fun sponge. You're stealing her sparkle. At least he quickly realizes that it's not that deep and they make up in bed. It's good that they're adults. I wasn't ready to deal with the fallout from Twerkgate. The next morning, Kevin gets a text. It's time for them all to get ready for Poppy Presents the Love Island Fest, aka Sad Budget Beach Club. I really think that ITV's cheapness is starting to affect the quality of the show. They need to loosen the purse strings a bit. I just can't believe this event was held in the garden. They used to at least take them to a second location. The brand deals are drying up for these islanders, but is the 50k prize still a big draw for contestants? Can we just scrap that and reinvest that money into the show? This is such a sad state of affairs. Actually, no, I'm wrong. Give the winners the money because I purchased a Poppy and they are extortionate. They should be embarrassed by this event with their name on it. It's a mess and barely a step up from Firefest. The headline performer is Joel Corey again. The only place I ever see this man is on the show. I wonder if he's still with Coco of tit-licking fame. Regardless, they all seem to have fun dancing to songs I've never heard in my life, but I'm an old who hasn't been inside a club for a decade, so bless them for being able to sing along to the words of whatever the fuck that was. At least we don't have to watch this for long before Maya shows up. And it's unbelievable how good looking she is. She even managed to look stunning, wearing a dress with cutouts that looked like a doily. Now that she's here, it's time for a little game called If You Know, You Know, which I don't recall ever seeing on the show before, but my memory is horrible. Basically, each couple will have to step up to the podium, pick out a card with a statement on it, and then match it to a couple or individual. So that's pretty standard. That's basically every game they ever play. But the twist is that it will remain anonymous and everyone will be blindfolded and wearing headphones. Now, I feel like they should have revealed who picked who at the end for maximum drama, but this seems like an attempt for them to generate more clips for the grafties. The well is running dry. First up are Priya and Ethan, who are picking the couple who look great together but have zero substance or conversation. Well, at least we got the boring one out of the way early. They absolutely hit the nail on the head. This statement clearly belongs with Martha and Jordan. Even Jordan's like fair. There's no conversation or chemistry between them. These two are painfully dull and should be very thankful that Lola and Sean quit. This is all Jordan's fault for not picking Mara. They guess that it was Mika and Samraj who made that statement, and Maya tells them that they're incorrect. Again, what is the point of this if they're not going to tell them the correct answer? Next, Yulia and Lorenzo have to pick the islander who is giving desperate. This is savage. Yulia thinks Priya, while Lorenzo thinks Alicia. I personally would have picked Aiden, but Lorenzo wins rock, paper, scissors, so Alicia it is. She guesses Jasmine and Kevin and is of course wrong. Then it's Jasmine and Kevin's turn, and they're given the statement, one half of this couple is secretly bored but too polite to admit it. Now this is time for Cav to open the vault and reveal that Finley told him that he was bored and that things were getting a bit stagnant. Jasmine cracked me up by being so shocked that he hadn't spilled any of this to her. I'm with her. What's the point of being in a couple if you're not going to gossip and chat shit about everyone else? That's the one thing that Lola and Fitzy had going for them. They place the statement in front of Ellie and Finley, who guess that Yulia and Lorenzo gave it to them. Again, wrong. These islanders suck at this game, and that must have been really shit for Ellie to hear. Then we have Angie and Simba choosing the couple who are only in it for the 50k. And this man is petty. Of course he gives it to Mika and Samraj. He still hasn't recovered from her rejecting him. I feel it would be more accurate if the card said that they were doing it for clout rather than the 50k, because these two look rich. They don't need the money, but I guess Angie and Simba can't just pick out the people they think look the poorest. That would be hilarious though, if while everyone is blindfolded, they get up close and look at everyone's clothes to see who has any tears. Anyway, Mika and Samraj pick Martha and Jordan and are incorrect. When it's Alicia and Aiden's turn to pick the couple who bring out the worst in each other, he pretty much instantaneously comes to the decision to choose Jasmine and Kevin. Now, I initially thought he just hated Jasmine, but this is a weird sibling dynamic. He's clearly threatened by his younger brother. I bet the Murphy family has a group chat without Aiden in it, where they can just vent about whatever stupid shit he's done that week. When it's time to guess, Kevin, as a normal brother, couldn't even fathom Aiden being the one to pick them, but Jasmine knows better, so they lock in Alicia and Aiden, and it's correct. This is tense, and Kevin manages to turn it even redder. I felt bad for him. That's the one person here who should be guaranteed to have his back. If I was him, I'd also refuse to give Aiden a kiss. Next, Ellie and Finley have to pick the islander who's the most drama-obsessed. I feel bad when the statement is for an individual rather than a couple. It makes it feel a lot more targeted. They choose Yulia, which is fair enough. If it was maybe a week or two ago, there would have been a different answer, but in these last few days, she's been charitable and always given us something to watch. Even her and Lorenzo agree with the statement and incorrectly guess that Priya and Ethan were responsible. The final statement being decided by Yaz and Tommy is which islander is a walking red flag. They pick Finley and ding ding ding, that's absolutely who I would have picked too. And if Finley's going down, he's bringing everyone else down with him. He also considers Kevin and Simba to be red flags based on their Casa behaviour, and that they've done worse things than him. I love to watch the fuckboys turn on each other. Alicia shares that she would have picked Aiden, and he can't argue with that, but Priya feels the need to pipe up and stand by her man. Ugh, she's just doing too much. Ultimately, Ellie and Finley pick Yulia and Lorenzo, and they're incorrect. In the aftermath, they all head back to the Poppy Festival to debrief, and I find it so jarring when the camera quality is a lot more polished for these beach club scenes. It makes me feel like I'm watching a Netflix reality show, and it takes me out. Also, sidebar, but this reminds me that The Ultimatum is back, and I'm going to watch that new season tonight. Anyway, Martha and Jordan decide to be a friendship couple, and I couldn't care less. They're seat fillers at this point and don't deserve camera time. Simba gets things cleared up with Mika and Samraj pretty quickly too, and I don't think Angie says a whole word in this conversation. She's just here to enjoy her poppy and is ready to go home. Then we have Finley joining Tommy, Kevin and Aiden for a chat. and this just triggered my face blindness to the extreme. It was a real out-of-body experience to watch this debate between four variants of the same man. Finlay and Cavan have it out on who is the biggest red flag, and lads, you're both absolute pieces of shit here. Move on. It's a much harder decision to pick any of the boys who aren't a red flag at this point. Our episode closes with a reappearance from Maya, who has had a costume change and is ready to reveal the results of the vote. Dun dun dun! Which leads us into Thursday's night episode with Maya revealing the bottom three boys and girls. Thankfully this time they didn't bother to announce the top boy and girl, because I really think Lorenzo having to be responsible for the dumping decision again would have pushed him over the edge. So the results show that the bottom three girls are Martha, Alicia and Mika, and the bottom three boys are Jordan, Finlay and Samraj. As the lowest vote getters, Alicia and Jordan are immediately dumped from the island. Yeah, no big shock here. They were cooked and it was time for them to leave. Now, I have a bone to pick with the audience. Everyone is going way too far with this sympathy voting. How has Ethan managed to avoid the bottom three? What is even the point of him still being here? Nobody in the villa is interested in him, and while he seems very sweet, he is bringing no entertainment or love to our screens. Now they'll have to try and bring in someone new just for him, only for them to get swiftly dumped. If we have learned anything from Brexit, it's that the British public shouldn't be allowed to vote. It's always going to be a mess, and they make horrible decisions. Maya reveals that another boy and girl from the villa will be dumped tonight, with the safe islanders being the ones to make that decision. Honestly, I think all four could have been sent home and nothing of value would have been lost. But Mika and Samraj pull a Lola and Sean and volunteer to leave. I assume that this was genuine because it would be a pretty risky move to make when they just saw another couple get dumped for doing this. I am really getting fed up with people not giving a fuck and wanting to leave. This is a testament to how depressing life in the villa is this year. The fact that these thirsty, wannabe influencers are willing to sacrifice screen time just to escape this hellhole. When it's time for the Islanders to discuss who to dump, there's a dilemma, because Mika and Samraj are an actual couple. But if they choose to get rid of Martha and Finlay, then Ellie would be leaving right alongside them. Yulia is strongly on the side of keeping Martha and Finlay. She's pretending to care about keeping Finlay for Ellie, but her real agenda is obviously to keep her bestie Martha. Which is fair enough, that's what they're all doing. But despite what anyone thinks about Mika and Samraj, clearly the right decision is to keep them. I'm saying this as someone who isn't even a fan of them. Martha is even chill with going because she has no romantic connections in the villa. And why would they keep Finlay for Ellie when it's obvious that he doesn't want this woman? It was brutal to hear Cavan tell Ellie that Finlay told him he was bored. But she's been living in delusion for too long. And I don't think it's their responsibility to keep Finlay just so Ellie stays. All week, she's talked about leaving with her head held high. If that was the case, she would have already left this place. She wasn't in the bottom, she can always stay, and I would rather that than her leave for a man who barely tolerates her. Now, Jasmine is obviously also just trying to keep her bestie in, but I agree with her that at this stage it does defeat the whole purpose if they're eliminating the strongest couple. Ellie and Finlay are dead in the water. I'm sorry to Lorenzo and Simba, but sending Finn home is not punishing Ellie. Her punishment is choosing to stay with this man. When it's time for a group vote, everyone bar Yulia and Ellie decide to send home Martha and Finlay. And I got annoyed with Priya and Angie refusing to vote. They needed to get it together. It just felt like they didn't want to get any blood on their hands, and I thought it was weak. When it's time to announce a decision, Yulia is already whining about how this was the wrong choice, and sometimes she just needs to shut up. It's great that she's so strong about her convictions, but I'm getting annoyed at her self-righteousness and the way she feels the need to hammer her opinions at everyone constantly. It's exhausting, and she needs to read the room. Like Lorenzo, she is definitely missing a sensitivity chip. What was her thought process behind telling Mika that she should have been the one to go when the decision's already been made and the girl was already crying about it? I think that this was the right decision, and that became even more obvious when Ellie told Finlay that she was leaving with him, and this guy couldn't give less of a fuck. He even looked a bit annoyed because now she's cock-blocking his Mallorca airport Holiday Inn hookup with Alicia. If Ellie had stayed, she could have won this whole thing in a friendship couple with Lorenzo, so Yulia should just be thankful she wasn't ditched for that scenario. I was disappointed when we didn't get a goodbye scene between Ellie and Angie and Simba. They've clearly formed a really close friendship and we're devastated to see her go. This is just more evidence of all of the important friendship scenes that are being omitted because they don't fit into the agenda that production has. And naturally, when Angie is mourning later, Simba has to ruin it by getting defensive over the decision he made. He's consistent and will always manage to make everything about him. Now, in the aftermath of the dumping, Mika and Samraj are struggling with the public putting them in the bottom again. They're really reminding me of Tasha and Andrew from Series 10. They really haven't done anything wrong. I'm starting to think that they do actually like each other, but people just aren't warming to them. I do feel some sympathy, although I can't deal with Mika complaining about being so ready to go. If that was really the case, then you should have made it a lot clearer that you wanted to go home. The next day, Samraj takes it upon himself to ask Yulia why she chose to dump him and Mika. This guy, what is even the point of this? You got to stay. Just drop it and stop worrying about people's perceptions so much. He's too thin-skinned. We close this episode with Jasmine realizing that her and Kevin are fading into the background, so it's time for them to have a new storyline. She's getting worried that she has deeper feelings for Kevin than he has for her, and wants him to be ready to say I love you to her. Ugh, girl, you coupled up with a 21-year-old. What were you expecting? You see firsthand the way that Mika handles things. If she wants to be with this boy, then she needs to accept that this is the level of depth and commitment he's able to offer to her. Meanwhile, in what I'm sure is a total coincidence, Kevin is having a very similar chat with Aiden and discussing whether it's time for them to go exclusive. For once, Aiden gives pretty decent advice, or at least isn't actively trying to sabotage their relationship. It's safe to say that one of those painful girlfriend proposal scenes is on the horizon. Okay, let's finish off this week with Friday's episode, and I'll keep this pretty brief. If you had to skip one episode this week, this was absolutely the one that could be missed. It was super boring. Fortunately, I have no social life, so was able to make the time to watch this while my partner was at the cinema watching The Odyssey. We start this episode with a sit-down between Jasmine and Aiden. Now, with the finals fast approaching, in addition to a cowboy hat, Priya has also been wearing the hat of a leading PR crisis management expert. My conspiracy is that she's performing a full image rehab of Aiden so that they can securely make it to the finals and possibly get offered a cover or at least a feature in OK Magazine. That has got to be the reason why he's taken it upon himself to clear the air with Jasmine about the challenges and his general disdain towards her. He kicks things off by telling her that he stands by her and Cab 100%. Bullshit, but at least he had the decency to wear sunglasses because we all know by now that he has no poker face. Then we have to hear him reiterate for about 1 million times that yous are in a very good position, yous are thriving, and that he's very happy for them. Jasmine, oh Jasmine, she is truly drowning in the dick sand, and this isn't the girl that we met on week 1. She's now calling Aiden her brother-in-law. Hopefully, once she's reunited with her friends and family, she'll snap out of this Kent suburban life fever dream. Now, I never thought I'd see the day when Yaz and Lorenzo would be having a waffle double date with their new partners, but I guess Yaz is the remaining blonde left in the villa for Yulia to befriend, so this was inevitable. Naturally, of course, Lorenzo has to constantly reminisce about the times when he and Yaz were kissing on that same terrace. He loves to make things awkward. And you know it's a slow episode when I'm even bothering to mention this waffle party. But it did make me desperate to have one, and I had to physically restrain myself from ordering one on Uber Eats. We also get a chat between Priya and Yulia where their beef is squashed pretty instantly, and they agree that they're probably both too similar and very opinionated. This was fantastic, and I need the fan base to adopt a similar mentality. These things just aren't that deep, and if the Islanders can move past things so quickly, then there's no need for the audience to be holding grudges. Now, I appreciate that Priya continues to check in on Ethan. This poor guy just feels like a lost spirit who is wandering the halls of the villa. It's taking me back to the many, many hours I spent as a child playing the Casper the Friendly Ghost PS1 game. They need to send someone in for him ASAP because this is starting to get sad. And it's great if Priya wants to be friends with him, but she doesn't need to be talking to him about Aiden or keeping him in the loop about asking him to go to the hideaway. Ethan could not give less of a fuck. He would like to be removed from this narrative, and honestly, I don't think he was ever that into Priya anyway. But at least the hideaway bed will be used in the series, and I'm sure that throughout all of this getting ready for bed montage, Simba was silently seething. This should have been him, and Mika should have been the one getting oiled up by a group of women in preparation. So I have to say that my eyes didn't appreciate Aiden bringing his heart rate challenge red panties to the hideaway, but I appreciate when a man puts in even the smallest amount of effort because Priya looked like 1,000,000 out of 10. And clearly Aiden agreed. When the camera panned through everyone in their beds, the under the cover tent formed by Priya and Aiden was comically large. So safe to say they've officially boned, and he will be a new entry in her notes app. They're really committed to the bit and doing their best to sell this fake relationship. Bless their hearts. Besides that, the main event in this episode is the Knowing Me, Knowing You, AHA game, with the couples competing to find out who knows each other the best. As the only single islander, Aiden gets a lucky escape and is tasked with being our host. He truly dodged a bullet here because we know this guy can barely remember the girls' names. And the first question is for the guys to tell us the girls' middle names. Honestly, all of these girls have such stunning and unique middle names. Not a Louise or Anne in the bunch. It quickly becomes clear that the couples that know each other the least are the waffle party attendees. Even Ethan knows Priya better than these guys, and we don't need to feel sorry for this man. He will be perfectly okay after the filler. He's already got a 3-digit body count. In the famous words of Tyreek, pulling and shagging is all he knows. It was interesting to see the lack of discourse around body count after the carnage from that It's Not That Deep challenge earlier this series. I feel like Jasmine has been ravaged by this experience and has truly lost all the fight that she once had, which is further evidenced when she thinks that Cavan would be more popular with the public than her. I hate how this show has made her doubt herself, and hopefully when she's out of this filler, she'll finally be hit with a revelation that Cav is truly punching with her. The most interesting question asked is who their partner would pick if they weren't coupled up with them. It really took me out that Lorenzo and Yulia both agreed that she would have picked Aiden. At least we're all on the same page that Jasmine would be coupled up with Lorenzo. RIP to that dream. Then we switch over with the girls being quizzed on how much they know their boys. Now, I'm clearly not coupled up with any of these boys, but it's a no-brainer that the love language of 99% of the guys that have ever been on the show is physical touch. They're nothing if not predictable. Something I found unsettling was learning that Cavan has slept with a 36-year-old. I hope this was a recent thing, but he is a child to me. I'm sorry, Kent, but what is happening? Then to hear that when Aiden was 18, he slept with someone in their 40s, predators are prowling on those streets. Now, maybe it's just because I'm on my period, but there was something very somber about this game. Having to see Jasmine choose herself as the one more emotionally invested in their relationship, and for Cavan to pick her too. Those warning sirens from Kill Bill should be going off in her head right now. At least Mika and Samraj were crowned the winners. They needed this after being the public's punching bag. And Yaz and Tommy got the most wrong, which I guess tracks with the lack of communication we've seen with this couple. From the outside, it looks like all they have is waffle parties, then shagging every night. Good for them, that sounds fun, but it hits Tommy hard, and now I know at least one more fact about him. He hates to lose. We close this episode and the week with Cavan being coached by his elders into opening up more to Jasmine and sharing his feelings of love. Now, in this show, people often get bogged down into these definitions of what their relationship really is. There are all these milestones that they feel like they have to tick off in the filler. But I could have sworn that they both said I love you or that they were falling in love with each other when they were frolicking like mermaids in the hideaway pool. Regardless, with basically a gun to his head, this child takes Jasmine to the terrace to confess that he's in love with her, and I feel like there's no better representation of their relationship than her having to wipe food crumbs off his face. This is what she gets for picking a 21-year-old. Next week, we're getting the family visits, and I'm genuinely concerned for the potential Murphy partners. And with that, I've wrapped up week 7. I'll be back next Monday to cover the final week. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you liked what you heard here, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, and consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps new people find it. You can also find me on Instagram at PopMonsterPod, and please DM me if you have any ideas for things you'd like me to cover in future episodes. Again, thank you guys so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.